Evening all. This evening, it's Sunday evening if you're wondering, and a little bit later on Sunday. This evening, I just wanted to kind of have a bit of a chat about a couple of observations that I picked up from yesterday. So great day of watching rugby yesterday, autumn internationals, and obviously watching our second team as well take on Yorkshire Ambulance, which was fascinating. Again, didn't really have too much of a coaching role. Was just there to kind of support the boys and everybody else that were kind of taking charge of that team yesterday. But a couple of things that kind of came to mind were, you've really got to use what you have when we're dealing with community and grassroots rugby. And I think really importantly is when you see a weakness in an opposition, you've got to exploit it. And there's a couple of different ways to kind of do this. And as a coach and as coaches, it's kind of our jobs to try and get that instilled in players. And one thing which I think is really important is just game management overall. So at our pitch, it's quite slopey. It's a lot less slopey than it was when I first started there, but there is a definite slope. So as you're playing in the first half or the second half, upslope or downslope, there is a change in tactics, or there should be a change in tactics. Now, one thing that I don't really quite get is that when we're attacking uphill, we seem to have this idea of, oh, I'm going to chip over the top or I'm going to kick. And that's great. If you're in your own 22 and you need to clear, absolutely fine. I've got no problem with that. But when it doesn't find touch and you give the opposition 20, 30, 40 yards to run that back downhill to a defensive line that is running uphill and 9 times out of 10 quite broken and quite staggered, all you're doing is just handing them the momentum back to kind of do that. And on the flip side of that is when we're attacking downhill, what we tend to do is try and hold on to the ball. And that's great. You know, I am all about running rugby, and I'll talk about that in a second. But sometimes, under pressure, the ball should just be hammered down the pitch, into touch, because it will roll. It will roll down that way, and 9 times out of 10, it will go out if done properly. And I think it's just a really frustrating from a coach's point of view to kind of see the two different strategies that are kind of used. And actually, when you attack down the hill, it should be about control and attacking in those places where you have an advantage. And that kind of brings me on to my next point about exploiting weaknesses. Now, rugby is a harsh reality game. If an opposition has a weakness, you have to exploit it. You have to be able to see what that weakness is, and you have to be able to run at it or organise things so you are putting options in front of that person or exploiting something that's there. So weaknesses to look out for might be they have a smaller player in a key position, a smaller 10, for example, or they have a smaller 15, or they have a smaller front row where you think you can go and dominate in a scrum or a line out or a maul. So they're things that not only the players that are looking out for, but as coaches, you should be identifying as well and just trying to see what that kind of looks like. So, for example, if you've got a winger that is faster than their winger, let's try and get the ball in the hands of that quicker player. Try and manipulate it so you get them one-on-one so they can have a bit of a go. If there's an injured player on the opposition team, and I'm not talking about somebody that's on the floor, I'm talking about somebody who is maybe limping back in the defensive line, somebody that's carrying a bit of a knock, that person is a weakness in the opposition and therefore something that can be exploited. I will always remember my first game of playing rugby league. Obviously, I coach rugby union now, but I will always remember my first game of playing rugby league. I didn't know what I was doing. I was very unfit. I was struggling to get back the 10 metres, and we played a very high quality team. And all they did was notice that I was struggling to get back. I was very slow to come forward in defence, and essentially I was knackered the whole time that I was on the field. And all they did was manipulate all their moves to run down my channel, which made it even worse, which made me even more tired. So when I'm talking about exploiting weaknesses, you don't have to do that in an aggressive way. You don't have to do that in a nasty or a violent way. We're talking about looking up and seeing at your options. If you've got a prop for the opposition that stood out on the wing, if you've got someone that's hiding around the ruck because they don't want to tackle, identify it and use it. Rugby is a harsh sport. It is a contact sport, and some people like to say that they play rugby. Some people are actually rugby players, and coaches and players will know the difference. You will have played with people like that as well. And lastly for tonight, and this is a bone of contention within our club, within our coaching staff, within the boys that I train, on advantage, penalty advantage, when you have the ball in your hands, as I said earlier, I'm a massive advocate of keeping the ball in hand and running, tiring out the opposition, keeping the ball in hand. The ball is the danger, and you have more opportunities to create it by keeping that ball in hand and stressing that opposition. And when you've got penalty advantage, it's even easier to do that, because if there's a knock on, if there's a forward pass, if there's something that goes wrong, you always come back. Now, the younger generation of players, they seem to have an inbuilt ability to think, right, I'm going to kick this. I'm going to kick this advantage. I'm going to do a little chip over the top, or I'm going to do a crossfield kick, or I'm going to do something along those lines, because I can do something flary and something a little bit sexy to try and get me in the headlines here and try and score a wonder try. Now, in my opinion, 9 times out of 10, they don't work. And all you do is you end up coming back. You don't tire out the opposition. You don't stress the opposition. And basically, you might give away one of your trick plays that you might want to use later on. My argument is that by holding onto the ball and causing problems, you can bust a gap. Everybody knows that there is advantage, so everybody should be pushing up. They should be supporting. They should be trying to, get there to try and help. But I'd be really interested to kind of know what your guys' thoughts are on this. Are you on the trick play and kick the ball, or are you on the keep the ball in hand and keep stressing the defence side of things? So leave a comment, message me if you want. It'd be really interesting to kind of know what the wider sort of rugby public think about that.